stories come to life, where the line between reality and imagination blurs, there emerges a voice that echoes through the very fabric of existence. One man stands at the crossroads of mystery and revelation, weaving tales that grip your soul and leave you breathless. His name? No idea, but he sounds cool. Anyway, here is some other guy named Jason Morrison, who is the host of Have You Read This?
One thing that I can say I've always made it a point to do was never ever buy a book based just on the cover design, ever. And I think for the most part, I've managed to stick to that. And I think we can all agree that we've found some really cool looking books with these fantastic covers that they just draw you in, and what's inside absolutely doesn't live up to the hype. So I found myself inside of Carmichael's bookstore here in Louisville, and I stumbled across Fever House by Keith Rosson. And you know how you do that side lean in a bookstore when you're trying to scan the shelves? I saw this book, and I guess it was new and it had come out, and so they had the cover facing, and it stopped me from doing that stupid side lean thing. Like I had to stand up straight, and I get it, because the book cover is it's really freaking cool. I guess probably since this is a podcast, I guess I should probably explain what the thing looks like. So if you haven't seen it, this cover, first of all, it's like a bright orangish red background, and that kind of color, I think, really stands out in the horror section. There's a lot of black and red in the horror section. There's not a lot of this bright orange. Spanning just about the whole height of the book cover is a hand, and it looks like it's got kind of, I don't know, sharpened fingernails. The pinky and forefinger are extended, giving the sign of the horns, if you will. And I even ended up going down a rabbit hole earlier, learning about the corna. Had no idea that was even a term and its origins. And all I wanted to do was find some more intelligent way to refer to the metal sign other than just saying the metal sign. The book title sits on each side of this hand in really big block yellow lettering. And overall, it's very much an attention getter when you see this thing sitting in the store. And obviously, there are times when my brain functions on the most basic and simple of levels. Toss in some bright colors, what appears to be just a severed hand on a book cover, and that's pretty much all I need. And I'll head to the checkout with that. But I was a little nervous buying a hardcover book just because of the cover. And so I did a quick scan on Goodreads, and what I saw looked promising enough. And then I read a little bit about the book just to kind of see what it was about, so to make sure that I wasn't just wasting my money here. I have a special treat for you today. Here to read the synopsis is H-list celebrity who was almost famous one time, Kathy Griffin.
When legbreaker Hutch Holtz rolls up to a rundown apartment complex in Portland, Oregon to collect overdue drug money, a severed hand is the last thing he expects to find stashed in the client's refrigerator. Hutch quickly realizes that the hand induces uncontrollable madness. Anyone in its proximity is overcome with a boundless compulsion for violence. Within hours, catastrophic forces are set into motion. Dark op government agents who have been desperately hunting for the hand are on Hutch's tail. More of the city's residents fall under its brutal influence, and suddenly all of Portland stands at the precipice of disaster.
Thanks for that, Kathy. Didn't realize you were still alive. My simple brain could only focus on the severed hand with some type of control over other people. That really in the cover, that was pretty much all I needed. And the rest honestly just seemed like a bonus. The book itself is divided into relatively short chapters, which I love, since it makes me feel like I'm making quick progress, even when I'm not. So each chapter is a different character's perspective. And I think it's fair to say there's a fair amount of characters in this one, but there was never so much that I felt lost in the story as if I couldn't keep up. And this book, it's a touch over 400 pages. I think I think this one sits somewhere like 412 pages. And I guess if you're used to reading picture books, that might sound like overwhelming. I guess if that page count makes you nervous, don't worry, it goes by very fast. I'm hoping that if you're actually listening to a podcast about books, that a page count won't trip you up. I mean, look, this thing is not War and Peace, okay? So don't be freaked out. I was trying to explain to somebody like just how this book begins, and I think the best example I could come up with was like you're parachuting directly into this world. I mean, right from the start, it feels like you're just dropped in the middle of it and you're hitting the ground running alongside these characters. You don't really have a lot of time to question things like, wait a minute, why did this dude have a severed hand in the first place? And why does it have strange powers over people? You're just dropped in, and the pace of the story, it kind of demands that you keep up. And there's not a lot of time to look back. In many ways, it kind of reminded me of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I'm talking about the original here, not any of the remakes. So don't let Jessica Biel's tight-fitting jeans and her white tank top make you think that one was better than the original, because it wasn't. I'm talking about the original, the 1974 release. You didn't get any explanation as to what was happening with this psychotic family. It's just all of a sudden, hey, here's this guy, Leatherface, and he's going to put some people up on some meat hooks. It's a roller coaster straight into hell from that moment on, and there is no stopping. And this book kind of felt like that to me. It was like, hey, get in. This is a wild ride. And it was something so fun and refreshing because of that. And because of the pace, it just felt so different than what I've read and what I have been reading. I was about to say something dumb like the story unfolds as it is being told. And thankfully I realized kind of how stupid that sounds. Like, what was I thinking? But couldn't get my brain to spit the right words out. Was that readers are still getting backstory info on the characters nearly up until the end of the book. It wasn't a case of, here's this character, here's everything you need to know about him, and then we're just going to progress with the story. It was more of, here's this character, but hang on, because I'm going to reveal much more about each one of them as we go along, all the way up to the very end. And that just made it even a more fun book to read, just learning more and more, like, oh snap, I had no idea that this was coming. The overall dialogue in the book, I thought that was great. It was what I felt perfectly balanced between just being enough dialogue, but not overdoing it. There weren't whole chapters where it's just people talking. It was just a really good blend. And I think one of the reasons why the dialogue also stood out to me was because as I was reading this, I could almost hear it as a legitimate conversation that was being had. Some of these books that I've read, the conversations kind of feel forced, or I don't know what the word is, like not template like, but just, I guess, forced, manufactured, I would say, not entirely genuine. You know, you'd read some kind of these scenarios and you're like, wait a minute, real people would never talk like that in a situation like that. But this book does it right. And I also got to say that I loved his writing style. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. And I guess I'm just referring to some of the sentence structure. It's just slightly different than what I've been reading. But again, it was good different. And like everything else in this book, I just thought it was done really well. And if I owned a bookstore, I guess where I would place this, I'd probably just toss it over in the horror section. I think technically it could fit under a few different categories, but since it does have a fair amount of gore in it, I have a feeling you would typically find it in the horror section. And if you're sensitive about gore and graphic details, first of all, you're listening to the wrong podcast. You'd be better off going to watch old Big Bang Theory episodes. But don't get me wrong, it isn't like this book is just violence and gore. I don't really even remember much of the gore. I have to admit that my mind is kind of numb to that. And I'm not talking about entirely numb and blank, you know, like the people that watch The View. What I'm talking about is being just desensitized to gore just because of the things I've read and the things that I've watched. The story in Fever House, it's just so fun that as you go along, violence and gore are present, but it isn't the sole focus of the story. And to me, that's a sign of a really good story, is the focus is the story. And you don't need all of these other bells and whistles, but yet we're kind of treated to them. I came across this awesome Goodreads review about this book. And sometimes I read these reviews and I'm like, you people got way too much time on your hands. Like, why did you write all of that crap? And then sometimes you read these reviews, you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly how I felt. And like, this one was one of them. I thought this was great. This person said, this is metal. Like, I'm not even sure how to describe it. It's horror and it's crime and raw screaming intensity. It's definitely gruesome at times and extremely fast paced, yet doesn't sacrifice character development at all. Our characters, good, bad, and indefinable, were so perfectly realized. That is great. I probably should have just read that and been like, hey, just go read the book. And you could have skipped all of this useless crap that's coming out of my face right now. But after I finished reading this one, I was on the fence about, what do I rate this? And I've had so many books where they're just so amazing. And then you get to the end and you just wonder, like, was the author struck by lightning and any and all ability to write a creative ending was somehow removed? Like, what happened to you? Like, this was going so good. And then all of a sudden it's like you just run into a wall. But I think that's a challenge with these books. I mean, isn't it? Like, if you're on an awesome roller coaster ride, aren't you kind of always going to be disappointed when the ride is over? When I was thinking back and how to rate this, and I was like, did I like the ending? Because I honestly, I don't know how I was expecting Fever House to come to an end. All I know is, like, when I got done, I thought, okay, at the very, very minimum, this is at least 4 stars. Nothing lower than that. And if you've read this and you rate it lower than 4 stars, then there's something wrong with you. And you need to go back to reading just like picture books. I was going to make a Colleen Hoover joke here in honor of my oldest daughter, but I don't want y'all to come for me. So I'll leave that one alone. That's for her and her TikTok followers to argue. But really quick though, I wanted to say, like, am I the only one that hates only having 5 stars to work with? I mean, I've read so many books where I feel like, okay, definitely 4 stars, but like 5 stars is the unicorn, isn't it? Like this perfect book. Some of these books, are they really deserving of a 5-star rating? 4 still feels like it was so good, but it's not a 5. It's 4 is too low. I kind of wish that I had like 4.5 stars as an option. And I think that would make me feel a little better. So I took a walk in the rain at night to connect with my innermost being. And when I reappeared into society, I decided to give this one 5 stars. I mean, in all seriousness, it was just that good to me. I felt like 4 was just really too low. I think just approaching just this one, I liked it so much. I feel like I could give it 5 stars and feel perfectly okay with that. I mean, look, you get henchmen, a mysterious severed hand with mysterious and evil powers, a dystopian setting, zombies. Yeah, you get zombies, crime, suspense, horror, and a rogue government agency. And if that isn't enough to garner a 5-star rating, then you just need to stop reading. So at the end of all of these episodes, I try to find other books that you would enjoy based on this one. And if you like reading Fever House and you want something similar, then I have no recommendations for you. I really struggled with this. To me, this book was so original compared to the other things that I've read that nothing else immediately jumped out as like, oh, this book is just like that one, because this one stands on its own. I even went to Goodreads and I looked under all of the books that I've read and I started scrolling to think, okay, surely I'm going to find something in here that's very similar that I think people would like. And I just had a hard time with it. And that's a testament to this book, I think. Now, thankfully, there's a sequel to Fever House titled The Devil by Name. And so it looks like I'm just going to have to hop on that pre-order. And it's a little unfair that we've got to wait till September. No pressure, Keith, but this one better be as awesome as the first. Mr. Rosson, I got to say, if you are listening, from the bottom of my heart, as an avid reader, thank you for one hell of a fun ride with this book, and I look forward to reading more from you.
Down 3rd Avenue he goes, away from the hospital, just walking to walk, to feel some kind of movement. And a man sitting on the curb with the dejected posture of a drunk slowly turns his head, affixing a pair of glittering eyes on Bonner. Blood is smeared across one side of his face and darkens the collar of his shirt. He's wearing a suit. He staggers and pivots, begins galloping toward Bonner on legs that seem strangely suited for it. A thought rips crazily through Bonner's mind. The man looks like a child pretending to ride a pony. It's only when he staggers around the garbage can and comes fully into view that Bonner sees that his ankle is broken. He is running on the bone itself, the ankle bone, his shoed foot flopping uselessly to the side. The man is heavy-set, balding, slow. Horror seizes Bonner's throat. He sidesteps, tries to keep the garbage can between them. The man hisses, cocks his head. Through the blood, Bonner can see that the side of his face is a galaxy of bite marks. He turns and runs.
Until next time.